Hey guys, Philosophy JKD here, back once again. Just had a crazy idea. Okay, just stick with me. We can go here. Okay, One Piece. Okay, we've seen Devil Fruit Awakenings. What would Kuma's Paw fruit look like being awakened? I think that if he were able to awaken his Devil Fruit, maybe he could bring back people that he just remembers, or people that were now dead. Maybe he could bring them back consciously and put them in another vessel. What do you think about that, guys? Because if that's true, now it brings more sense to when Gold Roger said that he wouldn't die, my friend. Because we know Gold Roger basically died in the beginning of One Piece, you know? So if his mind could be brought back because Kuma met him, okay, or is able to get access to something, because they say in your genetics is the whole inside of our DNA, okay? Our deoxyribonucleic acid, okay? Is basically the finding part where our soul encompasses our whole essence. So our DNA is the essence of our soul in physical matter. So I'm not gonna sure how Oda would do this. Maybe Kun would only need a little piece of their genetics. Maybe Kun would have to remember them. That's some mythology there, because like in the Old Testament, they said, "Yeah, you're alive, but you're living in my head, and I pull you out of me, or I let you stay a part of me." Maybe in the future, Gold Roger will come back. I don't see a reason for Whitebeard to come back because we now have his son. But what if it's possible that people that Kuma met in the past, even his own father, could come back? Maybe he can bring his mother back at a certain point. Maybe it's a way for Oda not to kill off characters and actually give the fans what they kind of want, not just a flashback, but a kind of a nerfed version of these legends of the the greatest, well, not the greatest, but the older generations of the older generations, before the Straw Hats came in. Maybe that's a way to say, okay, Luffy's bringing back all these people, and this is why it's happening. Maybe even I don't know. I think that was kind of conclusive, but it's odd when we dealt with Wano. I thought it was interesting how there was writings about what was going to happen in the future, and if your person kind of knows what's going to happen in the future, you can kind of take steps, to try to not make that future happen negatively and make sure the positive outcomes happen. So, is it possible, because we already have somebody who can age people up in Wano? Is it possible that Oda will bring back Odin, because he seems to be a fan favorite? And some animes go fan fictiony. Is One Piece gonna go that way? I don't think so. I think that if Oda does it, he already thought about it. He already made those loopholes, and those holes are open. I mean, we've seen people that could travel and pass. We've seen people that can age people. We we've seen multiple people, not just age people. We've seen people, in particular Jory Bonnie, that can evolve people based on a different reality altogether. So if Bonnie's Devil Fruit was awakened, could she resurrect people in a timeline when they were successful? This is some wild stuff, because I believe we've seen Logia the awakenings in Punk Hazard. Okay, that's how you end up with the everlasting ice and fire, right? We've seen Doflamingo awakening. We've seen Monkey D. Luffy awakening. Honestly, I don't want to say we've seen the Kaido awakening. Okay, I don't want to say we've seen it. However, he had the ability to affect the clouds that move the whole island. That seemed like a partial awakening, or if it's not awakening, it's a partial. Okay, I don't know what the full awakening would look like for that. Maybe a full awakening will be that he could lift the whole surface of the whole planet up and back into the clouds, making the whole world one piece. Maybe that's the awakening for that. I don't know. I'm just pulling this out of thin air. I normally have more facts on stuff, but based on what was said in the story, for some reason, Gold D. Roger thought he wouldn't die. Does that just mean he thought that his will would not die and that he would have a chance to send everybody into the new world based on saying that he had a treasure? Did he know that was going to happen? Or was he talking more literally? Like, I may physically die, but I will be brought back. Which goes straight into older mythologies. For example, um, Ivankov represents a deity in Egypt, Baphomet, but also a deity in other older texts like Atlantean emerald tablets where a person can change your gender. That was a god could do that. But at the same time, other gods had other bodies. Now we're seeing doppelganger clones, wherein a clone doesn't necessarily have a will of its own until a certain time passes where it has enough learning to actually make its own decisions, because part of being a living soul means you have an energy of your own, being a spirit, okay? You have flesh of your own, and you don't really have flesh of your own if you're a clone, okay? But then now, okay, so you have energy to energize yourself, okay? You got your physical body, but you also have a mind that you made up of your own. And these clones, up until Boa Hancock's clone, S. Snake, we haven't seen that they all have that. So they're not awake yet. They're still, quote unquote, sleeping. But in other texts, they say when you're awake, you're actually asleep, and when you're asleep, you're actually awake, because our true potential is boundless. When we are in awake, when we're living in the physical world, we're actually in the grave or asleep. But I believe one piece is possibly inverting that, because we saw that the personality of the quirk factor, not even the quirk factor, just the bloodline lineage factor of these people, let them have personality types. So does that mean that Jinbei dies because his Seraphim's here? This is gonna be pretty interesting, guys. I think that Oda can just play all day in this, and I really think, unlike some other series like DBZ where there was more fan fiction, where I think things were done to kind of please the fan base, I look at One Piece and I think Oda knows what he wants to do, basically in terms of concepts. At the same time, I think part of Oda wants to be unpredictable. So does that mean we're taken away from him? I think ultimately, Ichiro Oda will choose what he wants, but I think he does get affected by, the live action movie, like what will be best here. And I do think he gets affected by content creators. There's some great content creators out there. I don't know if I should be using their names or whatnot. But yeah, it's like in basketball. People can authentically steal. I don't steal people's anime content, but I mean that'd be a good idea. If somebody were just like, oh, you know what? I look at all these other YouTube people, and they allow me to look at their stuff, and this is why I disagree. And that would be a whole new genre. That's probably something that a guy like me should do. But what I'm saying is, um, creativity. What's the key to creativity? One may say um, a lot of things, but when you don't know other people created it, I mean, hell, for hundreds of years we've given credit for inventions that were created either simultaneously, like in the light bulb or in bolt, the battery, when it was co-created by multiple people basically around the same time. So I think Oda may be influenced by some of these ideas, but at the same time, I'm looking at the little puzzle pieces he left in the past. So he's left the door open for a lot of things. It may have been the actual blueprint for him to leave these pieces in place for us to eventually come pay attention to it, and then him make something out of the stuff that we touched upon, and even do some stuff that we didn't even think about and blow our brains away. Okay. So guys, don't forget, please like the video, share, subscribe. Okay. Peace.